Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Ultimate Comics Podcast. My name is Nabeel Gaber, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I am Josh Kang, the other host.
And this is the podcast where we talk about Ultimate Marvel, an imprint of Marvel Comics that began in the year 2000, an attempt to modernize and update, reimagine Marvel and its characters for the 21st century. And Josh and I have been reading through a handful of issues every episode. We've been going through Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimates, yada, 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 discussing those issues, our thoughts, what works, what doesn't work, what actually hasn't aged so well, considering now this was 20 years ago at least.
And
And
a lot of stuff that hasn't aged very well then turned back around and aged a little too well.
yeah, that's right, especially politically. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And yeah, we also talk about how these comics have also had an influence on other media, including Marvel's movies, TV shows, cartoons, things of that nature. This is a very special episode because now we have finally reached Ultimate Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
Marvel's first family, as they say. We're going to talk about the first 6 issues of Ultimate Fantastic Four. I'm very excited. I've been eagerly anticipating this for a while. I love the Fantastic Four.
I also love the Fantastic Four. Ultimate Fantastic Four, I wouldn't say it's perfect. That's no media is perfect.
Right.
But it is in terms of like if Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Avengers is like on one hand and Ultimate Spider-Man is on the other. Spider-Man being very close to the comics, X-Men and Avengers being they're more of like parodies or emulations of the original characters. Ultimate
Mhm.
Fantastic Four is squat in the middle, I feel.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think Ultimate Fantastic Four, especially this first arc, benefits by being jointly written by Mark Millar and Brian Michael Bendis. This is the only time I can really think of that they actually work together, which is kind of crazy because they're two of the biggest names I would say when it comes to writers on Ultimate Marvel in the beginning. You know, with Brian Michael Bendis doing his whole run with Mark Bagley on Ultimate Spider-Man, and then Mark Millar, of course, being the idea man behind the Ultimates and Ultimate X-Men, especially the first like 30 issues of Ultimate X-Men or so. So seeing them work together is pretty interesting, especially because I think they're different kinds of writers, as we've talked about a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
Mark Millar is a lot edgier, and his
More
stuff can be
political.
yeah, more political, definitely. I feel like he's more of a big ideas guy and conceptual kind of idea man. And Brian Michael Bendis has definitely been better at more character focused, I think, just smaller scale stories about characters like Spider-Man, who's just a street level teenage hero. I mean, say what you will about Bendis speak and the way he writes dialogue, but I think the stories have also just generally been more fun, more hopeful and optimistic. So seeing them work together on this is pretty wild. I was reading about it, and it's also crazy because they live in totally different places, with Mark Millar living in Glasgow, Scotland, and Brian Michael Bendis living in Portland, Oregon. That kind of makes the collaboration a little difficult. But what we read is that on this first arc, Mark Millar did the basic plot, like structure for these issues, and then Bendis went in and really like filled in the dialogue at the end of it all. It really plays to their strengths, I think, with Mark Millar as the idea guy and Bendis more as like the character focused, like dialogue kind of guy.
I feel Bendis is very much good at modernizing characters. Millar is very good at like creating these parodies or emulations of characters to match with current political trends and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And Ultimate Fantastic Four, I think, hits a good middle ground between it, and which is really impressive. Like you said, they're operating in much different time zones. So, like for those who don't know, as of now, Nabeel and I operate on two different time zones.
That's
We,
right.
yeah, we've been basically mostly Nabeel, but a bit of me too, have been trying to basically do this on our free time when we're not at work or
Yeah,
school.
that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, our time zone difference probably isn't as big because you being on the West Coast and me being on the East Coast, it's like a 3 hour time difference for
yeah.
us. I feel like it's not as bad as Oregon and Scotland. But
No, no.
yeah, I think California and Massachusetts are a little more doable.
I always forget you're not in New York. Because I feel when people think of East Coast, they think of New York. And and this is relevant because every single story set in Marvel, everyone criticizes it, it's set in New York.
Yep.
And this is my criticism of Marvel. The loser team is always the West Coast team in LA, my city.
I mean, the West Coast Avengers, I like. They're
Oh
pretty
yeah, they have
cool.
some good stories. But it's
Yeah.
the B team. It's the B team. Why is
Yeah,
it
it's
LA
not
the
the
A
main
team?
Avengers team. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the A team.
Well, at least they're not the Great Lakes Avengers.
You know what? I like the Great Lakes Avengers. It's a parody and it knows it. And
It's
they
very
know it.
fun. I love the
Yeah.
Great Lakes Avengers.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to Fantastic Four, it's pretty cool, I think, the foundation for this series, because we said we got Millar and Bendis on writing, and the costumes for these characters were actually designed by Brian Hitch, who was the artist for the Ultimates 1 and 2, both of those miniseries. So it has a big Ultimate feel to it, and it has a lot of the primary, I would say, architects of the Ultimate Universe from the beginning.
Yeah.
We also have Adam Kubert on art for the first story arc, who did a lot of great
Yeah.
work with Millar on Ultimate X-Men.
At times, Ultimate Spider-Man does not feel like it's set in the same timeline as Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates, despite the fact we get crossovers. This one, probably because you get all these influences that worked on everything so far, it does feel like, oh, this takes place in the same universe as Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimates and the X-Men.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
This is very intentionally done to be specifically Ultimate Fantastic Four. It fits right in, I think, with
Yeah.
everything else.
And I think it's able to do that in a very neat way because it's everyone working on it, and it's also the last one. This had a really because I feel the Fantastic Four have not had a big impact on non-comic-y audiences as much as a lot of other properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the movies were like I don't know, like I didn't think any of the movies were bad. Oh, by the way, audience, for you guys, we watched old Fan Four Stick yesterday.
Yeah.
To do this podcast properly, and I was right to do this podcast properly. You need to watch Fan Four Stick because Fan Four Stick was directly lifted from this comic. Like the
Yes.
screenwriter literally said, "We just used this comic."
The 2015 Fantastic Four movie that was marketed so poorly because they put a 4 where the second A was in Fantastic, and everyone just dubbed it Fan Four Stick.
Yeah.
I had never seen it before last night when Josh and I sat down to watch this movie for research purposes. It's bad. It got 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Quickly forgotten. I'm sure not a lot of people even really saw this movie who weren't already comic book fans. It's not great, but a lot of it is based around Ultimate Fantastic Four. But yeah, really the problem is the movies for the Fantastic Four have not been great. I'm a fan because I grew up with the original Fantastic Four movies that have Chris Evans as the Human Torch and everything. Those movies are at least fun. I can admit that they're not really good movies, but I have like a nostalgia for them. But I think, yeah, the reason why a lot of people who aren't even comic book fans don't really know much about this Fantastic Four is just because they haven't had great media representation, which is a shame because you go back to the 60s and the Fantastic Four are called Marvel's first family because that's the first major creation of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's the Fantastic Four. That's the basis for the Marvel Universe as you know it today. And so what I love about Ultimate Fantastic Four is they take it very seriously, that responsibility. You can tell because it's like an all hands on deck situation. You got Mark Millar, you got Brian Michael Bendis, you got Adam Kubert, you even have Brian Hitch designing the costumes. It feels important and it feels like this is a big deal. And I think it works really well, this first story arc. That's why I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I really like the story arc too. For those who are aware, Fantastic Four not as big of impact on modern popular culture as the other heroes, but there have been 3 movies, 2 separate universes, plus the Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes TV show, and they're all based off of Ultimate Fantastic Four. Some more than the others, but they're all generally based off of this arc as the template for the origin.
Yeah, that's right.
Or a mixture.
This is a really great update to, I think, the Fantastic Four's origin, especially because the original 60s origin is very much set in the Cold War space race era between the US and the Soviet Union. It's really centered around them trying to make it out into space before the Soviets can beat them to it. And now at this point, they're in the early 2000s, and you're like, okay, well, we got to find something that works
Yeah,
for the 21st century.
the Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it collapsed a little while ago, honestly. Like at
Yeah,
that point, it had been gone for like at least a decade.
yeah.
So this
The
was much needed to kind of refresh and update the origin, and that's why it makes it into the movies, even though the movies weren't so great.
But what's interesting is I feel the big contribution, the ultimate, like other than the maker, which we will probably cover maybe next year. By the way, our pace is going.
Yeah.
The big contribution that people don't think about for some reason, the Ultimate Fantastic Four, is this idea that Doctor Doom was part of the original mission that got everyone their powers.
Yeah, that's right. That
Yeah,
began in Ultimate and has continued throughout other media and adaptations of the Fantastic Four since then.
yeah,
We should just dive right into it then, because
yeah,
then we can talk more about it. Let's just go. For Ultimate Fantastic Four #1,
yeah.
the first couple issues, the formatting is pretty interesting because the the pages are a lot narrower. The panels and everything are very narrow. So
Very much like a movie script, right?
yeah, it seems pretty cinematic the way that you like follow like down the page, and there's a lot of time jumps and everything. It
Yeah,
begins 21 years in the past when a baby's being born and the parents are very happy. It's a very idyllic scene. The kids playing with the mom's hair and they're like, "Look what we did. Look at what we've made." It's what you normally think of when you see a baby being born in a hospital to two loving parents.
yeah,
And then it cuts to then 10 years later, and the baby has grown up a little to become, he's Reed Richards, and he's just this nerd who is being bullied. His head's being shoved in the toilet, as all
yeah.
the nerds have it happen to them, you know?
Did it happen to you?
No. I mean, this is what I always saw in movies and TV, but I never actually experienced bullying as explicit as this. This never happened.
Yeah.
People don't give you wedgies and swirlies and trip you in the hallways, at least for me.
I feel that's a very '90s thing. Like I was a nerd, you were too, but I feel the traditional nerd bullying is a very '90s or '80s phenomenon.
It felt, I don't know, it's very early 2000s, I thought, too, because you look at the 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and he's getting tripped on the bus, and bullies threatening to beat him up.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but
anyways,
yeah,
Ben Grimm then steps in to protect him. He's this big, muscular football player jock. He's
yeah.
like the white knight for him.
He's it's the traditional image of for every big jock, he has a nerd friend, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They make a pretty good opposites attract, like odd couple kind of a
yeah.
duo.
But Ben does save Reed. The kids are afraid of Ben. And when Ben, I see, it seems Ben tells Reed's parents about the bullying. His mom freaks out while the dad's like, you suck, but good on you, Ben, you grim reaper. You.
Yeah, he's like, Reed, don't let him push you around. I was like, Ben, wow, like, look at you. Yeah, that's great. Giving him what for? Yeah, he calls him the Grim Reaper, which is a fun nickname because his last name being Grim.
They're 12, between 11 and 13ish because of the time jump.
Hmm.
I don't know why it's called the Grim Reaper because sports aren't a big thing in junior high or elementary. It's a high school thing, from my experience at least.
Yeah, I think the kids who do sports, though, they start pretty young generally, and they kind of prep for high school. So you
Oh,
move on to football in middle school and things like that.
yeah.
But yeah, Reed's dad really likes Ben because he's this athletic, traditional, tough guy, sporty guy, and he's talking about the game with him and talking about football and all this stuff. And it's pretty sad because you can tell it really hurts Reed that his dad really doesn't like him very much.
And this is very different from traditional Reed's father, because Reed's father generally is a guy who's encouraging of his son's scientific pursuits.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
his dad in the main universe is a scientist and an explorer, and he's got a rich backstory to him. He's a pivotal character in the Fantastic Four world.
yeah.
So this
Here,
is very different.
yeah. Dad's also very much annoyed at Reed because Reed, to do his adventures, is taking apart phones, blenders, electronics. He goes like, "Did you take apart the hair dryer, the toaster again, Reed?" Oh,
Yeah, and this is after Reed's mom has brought him dinner, and Reed's mom is very sweet and trying to talk to him and getting him to open up. But then
Yeah.
his dad immediately busts him and throws this tantrum and tosses Reed's dinner, and you see he's got a bowl of soup on his head and everything. It's honestly abusive, I think. His dad is a piece of shit in this.
Yeah. There's a reason this Reed turns evil is
Yeah.
because, and it's funny because there's many versions of Reed Richards, obviously, because in 616 is because the big thing that they all know each other, the different Reeds. But the big thing about them is that they all turn out based on how their father raised them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think a big thing about Reed Richards is it's all about his family and his family environment. So the main universe, Reed had a loving, supportive father who encouraged him, and he also was surrounded by a loving family like the rest of the Fantastic Four.
Hmm.
This Reed had an abusive, like nasty father and upbringing, and
Yeah.
so I think we'll see how he develops more from there, but I think the key to how Reed Richards turns out is in his family. But
And
yeah, he's in his garage with Ben, and he's showing Ben this device he's experimenting with to explore another dimension that he says is layered on top of theirs. He theorizes that there's this antimatter dimension, and he
yeah,
wants to send stuff over there to see if there's intelligent life on the other side.
it's funny because Ben's there helping him out, and he's like, "What are you sending him candy for?" He goes, "I just want to send candy." And he's like, "You're not gonna send yourself for it." And he goes, "No, after the candy."
Yeah. He's like baby steps. We gotta run tests and do trials.
Yeah.
Scientific process.
Also, there's like a corgi or a dachshund's hound just watching the whole thing.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
And Ben's kind of just like, "Hey, I was just here to get help on my trigonometry homework. I didn't ask for any of this."
Yeah. Reed has sisters in this, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, I think it's revealed later in the main universe, years later, that Reed does have a secret sister. But yeah, he grows up with sisters in this version, which is pretty different.
Yeah. And they don't have the best relationship. It's not a bad one either, really. It's just a very standard antagonistic sibling relationship.
Right. She catches him in the garage and is like, "I'm going to tell dad." And he's swearing her to secrecy. And she's like, "If you promise to take me with you when you go to this dimension eventually, then I won't tell." And so they have to make that pact and make that deal. And then later on, Reed is experimenting again in his room. There's this big explosion blowing up a good chunk of his room.
Mhm.
And of course, his dad is pissed off again. And his
Yeah.
mom's like, "Why do you do this?"
Yeah.
And then later, he's at the science fair presenting this device he's using, and he actually teleports this model car to this new dimension.
Just like the Fantastic movie.
Yeah, a lot of this is it's honestly a direct adaptation in the 2015 Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah.
They take a lot of stuff like Reed and Ben being childhood friends.
Reed wearing glasses.
Yeah, and Reed and Ben were also college roommates in the main universe originally. So they're childhood friends here, which is adapted to that awful 2015 movie. And yeah, he also presents this idea at the science fair. A lot of this is directly adapted into that god awful. I will never support
Oh
Four
my
Stick.
gosh. You had fun yesterday watching it. You thought it was okay.
Yeah, well, I took an edible before I watched it, so
Yeah, the movie was okay. And look,
it
guys,
was fine. It just nothing happened.
that actually is kind of true.
Yeah, at the science fair, then he's found by some scouts who approach him,
Mhm.
and this Agent Lumpkin, who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be a reference to Willie Lumpkin, who is the mailman at the Baxter Building in the main universe.
Yeah.
So I think it's really funny in this version. He's a government agent who approaches Reed's parents after the science fair and says, "Hey, we want Reed to attend this government think tank, go to school here basically at this academy at the Baxter Building because he's way too smart to be going to public
Yeah.
school. This is up to his level."
And the dad
And
goes like, "No, because that good school means I gotta pay more." And Will Lumpkin goes, "No, we'll pay you." And he goes, "When can he start?"
yeah, his dad's like, "Show me the money."
Also, in 616, Willie Lumpkin is a government agent because mailmen are technically government agents.
Oh, okay. Well, you got me on a
Damn right,
technicality
I
there.
got you on a technicality.
Yeah, I hope you're happy.
I'm very happy. Agent Lumpkins
Yeah, reporting for duty.
to
Here are your
deliver your mail.
bills.
Suck it.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
I bet the
Well,
Baxter building has like a crazy energy bill.
I'm sure. Yeah, with all the experiments Reed does in there,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The government think tank they go to is the Baxter building, which is interesting. The Baxter building's turned into this think tank full of genius students.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as in Ultimate Iron Man. They
Yeah.
show even almost the exact same splash page, double page spread of all these kids experimenting with different like scientific inventions and the in the Baxter building when Reed shows up. I mean, this is actually a really good idea, a good
Yeah.
like new spin on things.
I don't like it's not my favorite to be honest, but I don't think it's bad either, like to
No,
be
no, I
honest.
don't think so either.
Yeah.
But then
Um
Reed meets at this academy Dr. Storm, who is the father of Sue and Johnny Storm, two kids who are also in this academy in the Baxter building.
and what's interesting is that this changes generally the story of Sue and Reed. It starts with them already being together, with Reed having this a bit of an age gap. Here they're the same age.
Yeah, they're the same age here.
In fact, Sue might be a year or two ahead for all we know.
Yeah, maybe, but
Yeah,
around the same age. I
yeah,
think there's more of an age gap in the main universe. And also, yeah, they start off in the original comics. They're pretty much already together and engaged in the first issue of Fantastic Four way back when. So this is a change. And Dr. Storm, their father, is impressed with Reed. Reed is like, oh my gosh, Dr. Storm, I've read all your papers and everything. And Dr. Storm's like, well, I'm really impressed with you
yeah.
because you were able to break through and send things into the end zone, is what they call it, this other dimension. We've been charting out and mapping out this zone, but we've never been able to break through, but you have. And the first issue ends with him giving Reed a look at the portal that they have that they're developing to go to this dimension.
I read half of this arc back to back with watching that movie, so I'll be honest, a lot of it's blending in my head.
Yeah.
And look, the
Because
movie is a mostly faithful adaptation of this arc.
the problem with the 2015 movie is that it's mainly just set up and then nothing happens after that.
Yeah, it actually is just the arc. This arc.
Yeah, but without the
The-
fun stuff in the second half.
yeah. Um, when number two, we get the something you and I actually were talking about earlier. We get this grotesque guy who's like the headmaster talking about you're not here to study. You're not kids. You're here to serve your country and build stuff and produce. You remember Phineas Mason? Yeah, because he's gone. Because I kicked him out.
Yeah, Phineas Mason, it's a reference to the main universe, and he's like, yeah, all he could do was disable our security system. You're here to produce bigger things than that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
It's also like this weird Ayn Randish thing, or like weird thing where it's like, you guys are geniuses. You're not one of the normies. You're a different species.
Yeah, he's like, you kids are built different. Yeah.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this. I think it's also a trope of like how in modern science and actually a lot of things, you're constantly making stuff. You're constantly publishing, or you're out of a
Mhm.
job. You're fired. You're onto the streets. You're on welfare.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you got to give us results or you're no good to us and you're out on the street.
Yeah. And Victor Von Dam is there, and he goes like, "You guys don't get it, guys. He's a genius. He's the only guy one sticking up for the guy who's gonna become the mole man." Yeah,
Yeah, because this professor, he's called Dr. Molekovic.
very
Molekovich?
long like Eastern
Like it's a
European name.
yeah, like an Eastern European last name, but they call him the Mole Man as a jokey, mocking way to bully this professor behind his back. And
Hmm.
Doom, or yeah, I guess they didn't want it to be too obvious that this guy is Doctor Doom, so he's called Victor Van Damme, like
Yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I think it's Millar or maybe even Bendis going maybe like having Doctor Doom's name be literally Von Doom is a little too on the nose.
Yeah. Like, maybe let's be a little more subtle than that, but we'll
Yeah.
also give him a goofy ass last name like Van Damme, like the major action hero. But But yeah, Victor does stand up to these kids and he's just like, no, this guy's a genius.
Yeah.
But Victor's also kind of an outcast and they're like, oh, he finally talks to us.
Yeah. It's also kind of interesting because I feel Doctor Doom in the comics would not see like Mole Man as a great person to emulate.
No, I don't think so. There are very few people he would actually look up to and admire other than himself.
He looks up to Reed to a certain degree.
Yeah, but he's also very jealous of Reed and wants to beat him at everything.
Look, we're not jealous of our inferiors. We're jealous of our
Yeah,
superiors.
right.
Who was the writer that said, I think it was one of the comic writers said, if Reed Richards dies, Doctor Doom will be the one crying at his funeral or something?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Who was
I'm
that
trying to
writer?
remember who it was that said that. I don't know if it was Jonathan Hickman or maybe Mark Waid or someone like that. Some past Fantastic Four writer.
Uh,
Someone said it, and I was like, that's so true.
but maybe it's not because Doctor Doom is jealous, but because he's just a man with a great love of all things. Man.
I think he just is in love with Reed, but that's just my theory.
Yeah. There's another writer who says something more explicit about it, too.
Well, anyways, then we cut to Reed, who is working on cracking the end zone and breaking through. And
Mm-hmm.
he's frustrated that he hasn't been able to hit a breakthrough yet. He's like, I'm not contributing. I think he's internalizing a lot of the pressure from Dr. Malekovic.
And his own dad to a certain degree because he never
Yeah.
really. Yes,
Yeah.
this Reed has daddy issues.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I'm sure he's internalized a lot of the pressure from his dad.
Yeah.
But then Sue comes over and she's being very supportive and kind and is like, you'll crack it. You're doing great. You've already done so much good work. There's definitely a moment or two where there's like a pause.
Whoa.
And he's looking at her and she's looking at him and she's like, what? And he's like, oh, nothing,
That could be anything.
All right, well, we'll see later in this very arc that is not just anything.
Yeah.
There's definitely sparks flying between these two.
Sparks, or maybe sparks is flying from one direction, but not the other direction.
I think they're both feeling
Can
it,
we
Mr.
just
Krabs.
have a character that's not a horn dog?
Listen, it's Reed and Sue. They're an iconic Marvel couple.
Not
what do
an
you want
ultimate.
from me?
Not an ultimate.
All right, well, at least in this first arc, they're written to be more like their original counterparts. But yeah, then later Reed calls his parents to check in, mainly just talking to his mom, and he's like, oh, did Dad like the motorcycle I sent him? But he's like, oh, I didn't realize that was the wrong color. So his dad's just an asshole, as we can tell.
Yep.
Because like he sent his dad a whole motorcycle, and it's like his dad's upset it's the wrong color.
Taking full advantage of that government, sweet government money.
Yeah, he's like really milking that government money.
Yeah.
But he's also sad because his parents aren't gonna come visit anytime soon. So it's a very sad version of Reed Richards. He's really had it rough, and you can kind of sympathize with a guy who has not such a great upbringing or background, but he has ideas and he has potential. And he goes to his room and he finds Victor in there.
Yeah. In the script we say Doom, but it's not Dr. Doom yet.
I know. I just always think of him as Doom. I know he's okay. Van Damme.
I wrote him as Victor with a K.
We'll just refer to him as Victor.
Damn
for
right.
Now.
Yeah. So I don't know. Doom's kind of like this creep. He broke into Reed's room and did the equation with Reed. He's like, get out, because he's like, well, why are you breaking into my room? Yeah.
But it's really interesting because Victor has broken into Reed's room and he's messing around with Reed's equations and for this breaking into the end zone, and he's like, oh, you've got the equations all wrong, but Reed's not hearing any of it and he's like, get out of my room. Mm-hmm. But this is funny because it's pretty much the opposite of how it was in the Doom's origin in 616, where they go to college together, Reed and Victor, and Victor has an equation for this experiment he's running, and Reed's pointing out to Victor, he's like, hey, you got the equations wrong, but Victor's way too arrogant to hear any of it. He goes through with the experiment, and that's when his face gets scarred. And then he ends up blaming Reed for it, but it's like, dude, he warned you.
Yeah. In this one, it's him pointing it out. They're in high school. And also, Reed does destroy Doom's body. Let's be perfectly fair.
All right, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah. In the vague versions that come up after this, Victor is kind of like the victim, though, where that Reed does kind of destroy his body, especially in Fan 4 Stick.
Well, Reed kicks Victor out of his room, and he realizes that Victor has a point, and he approaches Victor at the cafeteria, and he's like, listen, you were right, but you have to be civil and polite about it. You can't just go breaking into people's rooms and touching their stuff without actually having a conversation and being like, hey, this looks wrong.
I think Reed uses the words, let's be actual human beings.
Yeah, he's like, just behave like a human being. Which, yeah, honestly.
Doom goes, I'm busy. And he goes, I have adaptive control designs from robot manipulators, which I think is Doombots.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the big project he's working on.
And Reed goes, I'll help you with that if you help me with mine. And they shake hands and look intensely into each other's eyes. And Sue's staring at them, and she seems jealous
Because
of their
this is the
friendship.
real love story.
Yeah,
I root for them, definitely.
yeah. Or maybe she's jealous in a friendship kind of way. She's jealous of her friend going with someone she doesn't like.
Maybe.
Yeah, because
But
not
we'll see
everything is about
later that
horn
it's more
doggery.
than just friendship between Reed and Sue at the end of
Yeah,
this very issue, anyways. But later, Dr. Malekevich is approached by Dr. Storm and General Ross. They confront him about these immoral experiments that he does in biotech, which
yeah.
is literally him creating walking mold in the shape of a man. Like he is creating life, which, yeah, that's heinous and crazy.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, their main thing is that like it doesn't really have any social or like military applications.
Women create life all the time. Why can't men do it?
Because this is not a natural. He's literally creating it from mold.
Didn't God create us from dust?
All right. Well, if you want to get all creationist about it,
Also,
I
General Ross, isn't he dead? Oh no, this is technically a flashback. All
yeah, this
this.
is a flashback. So, but also it's revealed later that somehow General Ross survived that explosion in Ultimate X-Men, but
Yeah.
they'd never explain how he survived.
I think they killed him, and they're like, "Oh shit, we need him for Hulk
Yeah,
storylines."
like oh shit, he's actually an important character.
What was in the MCU? I kind of like how it's the other way around, where General Ross they have to keep alive, but the actors keep dying for him.
Yeah, rip
Yeah,
William Hurt. But yeah, Dr. Malekevich he gets fired, and we also get this crazy like zoom in, like close up of like this angle, like looking up his nostrils, and it's
yeah.
disgusting. It's horrifying to look at.
I mean, I'll be fair. I feel none of us look good from up from like down there.
Yeah, it's not a flattering angle for anyone, but
Oh,
especially not him because he just looks hideous.
is fired, and we get another time jump. There's a lot of time jumps in this arc. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest.
definitely a lot of
Yeah,
time jumps, which is very cinematic. I feel like very movie quality of time jump. This many years later, this many years later. Yeah, a lot of that.
yeah. They're doing the experiment in Nevada. John goes like, "Hey, if you want to ask out my sister, she'd be okay with it." It's kind
Yeah,
of weird, but
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
yeah. I,
Yeah, I don't know if I would really wingman anyone with either of my sisters.
mm-hmm.
I mean, well, one of them is already
He's
married,
married.
but like that's just weird. He must really like Reed to like go wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like my sister kind of likes you.
And Reed doesn't fall for such thought stuff because it's not a horn dog. He
He's
goes
a
like
man of science.
he's a man of science. He's a eunuch. He's a man with is one
I
of
don't know
those
about
guys.
a eunuch, but
He is a man who doesn't fall for such things.
he's a
He has
Sigma
more.
male. Yeah.
You said it, not me, because I associate that with incredibly now very toxic behavior.
Well, we'll see later on. There is a lot of toxic behavior.
Well, to be fair, that's after he gets together with Sue. But it's interesting. He goes like, "Hey, Johnny, don't you have a jeep to steal somewhere or something?"
Yeah.
And Johnny does attend this genius school with him. I never get the sense in any comic I read that Johnny is even at Sue's level or definitely not around Reed's level. And I'm wondering, I know you disagree, but Johnny's kind of, in my opinion, is here because he's a Nepo baby. He's like one of those guys that got into Harvard because his dad went to Harvard and his grandpa went to Harvard. His
Yeah.
dad runs a genius school, so he goes to genius school. He's not a genius.
He's not a genius. He's still smart.
Not enough to go to that school.
No. I mean, he's smart enough where it's like, okay, he's a mechanic. I think he's good with cars and machines and things like that.
Yeah, but then like those kind of kids go to trade schools, which is fine. They don't go to physics school.
No, but he's mainly just there to assist in any way he can and be there with his family, I guess. Yeah, he is kind of a Nepo baby.
Yes.
But then Ben shows up, just randomly shows up. Ben Grimm, Reed's childhood friend. He's just been riding around the country between semesters in college, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here. What's up? I just wanted to see how it's going, Reed." So he's just allowed to witness this experiment, I guess.
I think he even says, "Oh, I got past the guards because I told him I know you," and I'm like, "How did you even know he was gonna be here?"
Yeah, that's crazy coincidence. Okay, I guess we just needed Ben to be here.
Yeah,
When in the original comics he was there to pilot the space shuttle they were
yeah,
all going in. He was very important to their exploration and their mission. This is
yeah,
just like, we needed Ben here. We know he's not a scientist, but he needed to be there somehow.
yeah. Eh, it's a little ad hoc because, like you said, they have to justify being there. They're going to transport an apple to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, they wanted to test transporting things through this dimension to other locations. It's the whole idea that they're going to help solve world hunger by
And
transporting things around the world, by transporting it through the end zone and back out into our dimension.
so, for those who study policy, that makes no sense because the problem with world hunger is not about that because there is enough food, so this wouldn't actually solve too much.
I think it would just make it easier to transport things to other places,
Yeah, so you made Amazon.
except probably cheaper and easier.
Yeah, and during the countdown sequence, Sue just goes for Reed.
Yeah, there's this big dramatic countdown sequence before the experiment. She kisses Reed. Sparks
Yeah.
are flying again.
No, no, no. Reed doesn't consent to this. We don't know why she did.
I don't think he has a problem with it.
We don't know if he has a problem or not a problem with it. It just kind of happened. You know, a lot of people, because, by the way, if something goes wrong, well, big, bad. But here's the thing a lot of people, when things are going bad, just go for the person next to them.
I don't think it's a kiss of convenience. I think you're hardcore in denial about the chemistry between Reed and Sue.
I think it's one way. I think it's Sue going for Reed, and Reed's like, no, I'm busy. I have a
If
grind-set
it was
mindset.
no, I'm busy, he would have pulled away, but he
He
didn't.
literally tells Johnny go steal a jeep, and then the other time he just kind of ignores Sue when she goes like I'm here to help.
He's an awkward nerd.
Even an awkward nerd could say yes, and he doesn't.
He reciprocates the kiss.
No, he doesn't. He just takes it.
Anyways,
He
it
doesn't
doesn't
like.
matter anyways because something goes wrong as it was fated to happen in this experiment. The
Uh huh.
second issue ends with this like big flash explosion and something really goes wrong.
Yeah. When we wake up, Reed's kind of still there at the site. He's all stretched out. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
freaking out. Dr. Storm's like, my kids are gone. And then he sees like this monster thing asking for help in the distance, and the military just blasts at him. They shoot bullets at him.
Yeah, that's right. Reed looks like a creature from like a horror movie,
Yeah,
like with his stretchy powers. Like he's all like his limbs are all twirled up around and like his neck is stretched really far and like his core is like stretched. Like he looks like a monster. So of course the military guys like freak out and shoot him, but
yeah.
because of his powers, yeah, the bullets bounce back out.
His bellies explode, and the way he's shaped makes it look like it's from. If you guys know the wizard from the Virgins versus Chad memes, he kind of looks like that actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just got it from this.
that would be very funny.
Yeah, but Doctor Storm goes like, "No, that's Reed."
Yeah, that's right. And
Uh,
so that solves that problem. And then the next person we see wake up, what's really interesting is there's this motif throughout this issue of that same similar type of sequence of zooming out from someone's eye as they wake up and then zoom out to their head and the rest of their body and where they are. So you see Ben next, and he's waking up in Mexico City, and he is the thing now. He's got the
yep,
rocky hide and everything. And he is not aware of his transformation, of course, because he hasn't seen himself in a mirror or anything. But
yeah,
he gets up, and what's interesting is every step he takes, there's a big thoom, thoom. He's shaking the city, and
yeah,
kids are running away, and animals are flying up in the air every time he takes a step.
yeah,
And there's a really cool sequence that Adam Kubert illustrates where there's a truck coming at him from behind, and you see the truck basically in slow motion hit the thing from behind, crash against him, break, and you see it each panel, you see the truck flip over on top of him and crash, and it looks so good, but it's so fascinating to watch.
yeah. It's also they do change his powers a bit because like in 616 he could just walk around regular, and here they say he has to wear a special suit to like keep his impact from sinking everything. They say,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I think it makes sense when you're going for a quote unquote more realistic take on things. It's a
Oh,
good
did you say thing on purpose?
no, that was entirely coincidental.
You could say it's a coincidental thing that just happened. This thing.
Yes, he is a coincidental thing.
Yeah. Reed is back at the camp. Reed is sure is like convinced like everything was perfect until Victor changed things at the last second. We don't know if this is true or not. He just says it is because they had an argument before the test.
Yeah, where Victor was like, no, these coordinates are wrong. You want to go for these. And so now Reed's like, I couldn't have been wrong. Victor must have changed things at the last minute, and that's why things went wrong.
This is kind of like how Doctor Doom ironically acts in the comics, where he goes like, "I can't be wrong. Reed changes things."
Yeah, it was Richards.
Yeah,
Richards ruined my life.
yeah. In this case, it's the other way around. Richards did ruin his life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny how the roles have reversed between the main universe and Ultimate. Now Reed is blaming Victor for his problems.
There's always this thing where like Doctor Doom creates a great and harmonious society on Latveria, and people, oh, he could do nothing wrong, and he is obviously like a dictator and a supervillain who has a victim mentality.
Yeah,
In here, he does. In fact, like this, this this origin where you make it so Doctor Doom is the one who gets injured alongside the other Fantastic Four actually generally makes him an actual victim.
yeah. No, that's right. And yeah, he is a victim because there's no trace of Victor for the rest of this story arc, is the thing. This is the first time where we see Victor involved in the Fantastic Four's origin. Before in the original comics, he was not involved in that at all. And this is later adapted, like Josh was saying at the beginning of the episode, into other media like the Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes cartoon and all of the movies and everything. So yeah, Victor is kind of a victim here because who knows for sure whether or not he messed with the coordinates. Well, I guess maybe we'll find out later or not if that's true, but he's gone.
Yeah,
And Dr. Storm is calming Reed down. He's like, let's not throw around accusations.
I just lost my kids. Let's not add more stress to me.
Yeah. But he didn't really lose his kids because then we cut to Johnny waking up in a hospital. And I think it's at least in some region where they speak French because the nurse is speaking French to him. I don't know if it's France or could be Belgium or Switzerland or something, but
LG.
yeah, he's freaking out though because he has no idea where he is and no one speaks English and the nurse ran off. So he's freaking out and then he catches fire and luckily the sprinkler system goes off and everything's doused, but the room is destroyed. But funnily enough, of course, Johnny is perfectly fine and he's like, hey, can I make a phone call? Can I use your phone? And
Yeah.
so back at the lab in Nevada at the research site, Reed's putting all the pieces together because they hear that Ben is in Mexico City and Johnny's been found at the hospital. And he's like, these are all different elements. We have fire with Johnny, we have earth with Ben. Is he supposed to be air or water?
I think it's supposed to be water because he flows like water.
Yeah, he's supposed to be water. I've heard this idea before outside of the comics. I think it's a bit of a reach. I don't want to say a bit of a stretch because that would be a big pun on Mr. Fantastic, but
He
like,
literally wrote that into the script.
yeah, it does feel like a stretch, you know? Literally, it just feels like you're reaching. I don't know. We don't have to make it a big, like, oh, it's the four elements. Like, it's just, it can just be a thing, you know, where they
Yeah.
just get, it doesn't have to fit that
A
neatly.
thing.
Oh my gosh, I keep doing it. I'm too good.
I know you're a poet and you didn't even know it.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah. Sue wakes up in Mo Man's lair. I know Sue is the damsel in distress in a lot of the original comics.
Which is not great.
Yeah, but like I'm kind of like, well, you're modernizing it. Why do you have to keep making her the damsel in distress? Why not make Reed the damsel in distress, or why not make Johnny the damsel in distress? He already screams like a little girl.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite running gags in like the world's greatest heroes cartoon is that Johnny, he has this like high pitched scream pretty much once per episode is what
Yeah.
I noticed.
Oh yeah.
It's a very underrated, underappreciated show because it just went like one season.
Yeah. But also that was a big show. They had a whole. It was also another Ultimate adaptation that they used the
Yeah.
Rocket origin with Doctor Doom on it. But one
Yeah.
thing I find interesting is Johnny is also kind of like the damsel in distress in the MCU when we saw the Deadpool movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then they get him killed.
Yeah.
Or he gets himself killed, as we learn in the post credits scene. But
I mean, Deadpool also could have just kept it silent. So
but he's the merc with the mouth. You can't trust him to keep his mouth shut. Unless
Johnny,
this is X-Men Origins Wolverine.
yeah. Oh,
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah, the fourth issue begins back at the Baxter building where Dr. Storm is observing Johnny and helping him test his powers. And Johnny very quickly gets a handle on his powers. I feel like it's a little too quick. He gets his catchphrase very soon, and this is a command for him to flame on and flame off.
I get it. He has objectively the best powers in terms of they're the least controversial. They're the most flashy.
Yeah, he does have the flashiest powers that don't scare people as badly as the Thing. That's why he's kind of the rock star diva of the team. And he also has the flashiest personality too, so it fits with his power set.
Yeah. That's I remember back in the day wasn't the idea that oh Mr. Fantastic is stretchy because he goes from an inflexible person to a flexible person. Susan Storm goes from the Invisible Woman to an actual Invisible Woman, and Johnny just stays flashy.
Again, I feel like it doesn't need to be that intentional, but whatever works for people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ben wakes up in the Baxter building with Reed, and he's upset because he's like, "Dang, I thought this was just a dream." He's got an impact suit on, like you were saying, Josh.
Yep. So he doesn't destroy the Earth by walking on it.
Exactly, yeah. And of course, he's mad at Reed because he's like, "You did this to me." They get into a little skirmish or whatever, a little fight. And I'm like, I understand that in most versions of the story, because in most versions of the story, Reed is the one to talk Ben into this and to ask Ben to join him. He really has to convince him. You look at the original comics where Ben is like, no, the shields aren't tested and they're not going to work against the cosmic rays for a space shuttle. So we shouldn't do this. And of course, they goad him into piloting it because Sue's like, I didn't think you'd be a coward. And he's like, a coward? Because that's the biggest insult you could call someone in 1960s Marvel is a coward.
Mm-hmm.
So he's goaded into that. So I understand why he would blame Reed for becoming the Thing then, because he didn't want to do it. You look at all the movies too, like the original movie, he didn't want to go on this expedition or this trip. And then you look at even Fantastic, and Reed calls him up drunk and is like, come on, join me while we test this thing. All those versions, it's Reed pushing Ben into something he doesn't want to do. That makes sense. In this version, he literally just shows up of his own free will because he's just going across country between semesters at college. I'm like, dude, you wanted to be here. You chose to join on this experiment that you were not a part of. You can't blame Reed for this.
This is on you, buddy.
Yeah, seriously. It doesn't really work for me. All right, maybe it's not fully rational. Maybe he's just upset and he has to lash out and blame someone. But I'm like, it makes so much sense and is so much more sympathetic and understandable in other versions.
Yeah.
This one just doesn't really work as much for me.
It's funny because the big thing is Thing's the victim. Dr. Doom is jealous. I mean, this one is the other way around. Thing got himself involved in this. Ben got himself involved in this. And Dr. Doom is the victim of all this. His own gets turned into like a grotesque monster.
Yeah, which we will see later on in this series for sure.
Yeah, and I also think like in this version he doesn't even get powers; he just gets turned into a monster.
Yeah, so he really gets shafted with that one.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of I don't think if this what happens in the original movie. It's been a while. In the original movie, he turns into a monster. He loses his business, and watches everyone else become popular.
Yeah, they become celebrities and heroes, and he's just like, wow, well, I guess it sucks to suck for me. I lost my fiance. I lost my business.
Isn't his fiance Sue as well, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, he gets cucked.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, I know what that's like, Victor.
So does Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Anyways,
all the best men.
Yeah. But yeah, things calm down. Reed promises to fix Ben, as he always does in every version. And then we cut to Sue underground with the Mole Man. And you get to see that she can make all of her skin and her intestines invisible, which is pretty shocking and horrifying and nasty to look at.
We never saw that before, I believe. Where she doesn't turn all invisible, just parts of her invisible.
Yeah, no, this is her learning to understand and come to grips with her powers, so she's still experimenting with it a little bit, and she doesn't have a full handle on it.
This will be amazing if you're like a doctor, just watching someone do that, and it'll just make your
Yeah.
life so much easier.
Yeah, that's true. You don't need an X-ray machine. You can
Yeah.
see everything going on in there.
So we turn off your skin and clothes. All right, now put your organs back on.
Yeah.
You're
Like, all
good. You
right, I
get to
don't
go
need to
home.
see it anymore. Yeah.
You're good. You get
But
to go home now.
yeah, you can turn fully visible again.
Yeah, Sue. I think it's really interesting because she only now just recognizes Moleman as her old teacher. His explaining things, and then one of those Moleman grabs Sue and grabs her leg or humps her leg like a dog, and he just kills him in front of her, and she's like, "What?"
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
Mole Man runs a tight ship with his little mole men that he has
yeah.
created.
I think we find out later, like in the next issue, they call them Animen.
Yes, the Animen. And these are the people that he was creating
Yeah,
during his unethical, immoral, unauthorized experiments in the
yeah.
Baxter building.
And he goes on and on like, "Oh my! It's not just science I'm after. I'm after the lost con of Atlantis and the lost library of Alexandria. Atlantis has such wonderful technology. So you think you're going crazy, but then you remember Namor is in this universe, so
Yeah, so it's not entirely crazy.
Mhm.
Like, Atlantis is real in the Marvel Universe.
True.
But then he's like, the mole man's like a typical white man because he's talking about all these Hindu beliefs and stuff. You know, your classic white American man
Hitler.
obsessed with like Eastern religions, and he's going on about how special and significant all this is and how it relates to Hindu beliefs, yada, 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 with Sue and the rest of them having their powers from this experiment. And then it's revealed that they're actually sitting 1.4 miles below the Baxter building. And Mole Man shows his central hub to Sue, where he's got cameras and he's been spying on the people he call his children, including
Yeah.
Sue and Reed and Johnny. He proclaims his love for Sue.
This always happens.
Yeah, why? I don't know if this is like a romantic love or if he thinks he's like a parental figure or if it's
Well,
a
we found
little.
out later it's a romantic slash sexual thing.
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah.
So that's how you know for sure he's the villain.
Like I first thought like, oh, maybe it's parental because he says I'm left, I'm staring, I spy on all my children. And I'm like, well, he also threatened to kick him to the curb, but you go like maybe when he says I love you, Susan, it's like parental, like you said. But then we found out next issue, no, it's like very much a romantic thing,
Yeah,
which
it's
always
gross.
happens. They always do this professor love student thing. It's
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. It's a good way to get us to hate the villain, and I
yeah,
think, but it's also like, why did this always happens to Sue? Does the villain always have to fall in love with her?
especially because here she's like 16, 17.
Yeah, it's also revealed that she originally turned up near Vegas
Mm-hmm.
when Sue was materialized after the experiment, but the mole man had his Animen find her and bring her to him. And he also knows where Johnny and Reed are. And he's still looking for Victor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps going on about how, like, oh, Victor's the key. We need to find him
Yeah.
for some reason. And he wants to bring Johnny to Sue as like token of his love. It's like, I'll bring your brother up back to you.
He also did. To be fair, he also did look for Reed too, but like Reed spawned too neck close to the soldiers.
Yeah. And he
Yeah,
just
and
does not care about Ben.
yeah. Well, he doesn't know who Ben is. To be fair,
Yeah, because he was just this rando who came onto the research base on the day
some
of the
random hippie.
experiment. Yeah, who
It's
just
like this.
shows up.
It's like the scene if you remember from Men in Black where they go like, "Oh, in the original 17 Men in Black were like 17 government agents from different agencies, and some random kid who just happened to be on there on the spot."
Yeah, just there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then from the DNA and on this old artifact, he just creates a monster. And back on the surface, everyone's looking for Sue. And John's like, "We gotta find her." And this giant monster just pops out of the earth, and he goes like, "I hope that's not her."
yeah, because it would be a reasonable assumption to think, oh, that could be Sue. Ben himself has become unrecognizable. He shows up, and Johnny's like, "Who's that?" And Reed's like, "This is my friend Ben. You remember him from the experiment. He's turned into a giant rock monster."
And Sue turned into this giant brown Godzilla.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Yeah, I bet Doctor Storm after he says like, I was like, maybe I should have just bought her that PS5 last year.
Yeah,
She seems very pissed. Like she
yeah,
needs a PS5.
yeah. Eat a Snickers. You're not
Yeah.
you when you're hungry.
Oh, this is 2003, so I mean PS2.
Yeah, exactly.
PS2.
Remember your audience here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the next issue 5, is a very fun issue that gets into the action now that we've gone through the origin and we've seen the fun process of them getting their powers and everything. Now, Reed, Ben, and Johnny go up against this giant monster. Johnny is looking out the window and he accidentally burns a hole through the window with his powers and falls out. But then he's very eager to get into action and he's like, wahoo! And he flies towards it.
Because he has the best powers. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got the best powers for being a superhero.
yeah.
I mean, Sue has great powers too with her
Yeah,
force fields and everything.
I mean, like, if I could choose the powers, I'd choose Sue. That being said, Johnny has, like, the most, like you said, the most hero-esque powers. You say
Yeah,
flame on, you shoot fireballs. Actually, no, we find out here, he cannot shoot fireballs.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And Dr. Storm is yelling, let the Ultimates handle it. And I'm like, yes,
Yes.
remember which universe you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Reference that.
Ben goes, I might as well be a hero, and he jumps out, does a superhero landing, and immediately just gets grabbed by the monster.
Yeah, they're pretty bad at this from the beginning
Yeah,
because they're still finding their footing. They're not fully a team yet. They're not really heroes. They just got their powers. But
yeah,
then it's really funny because he's like, I'm pretty sure I'm hallucinating or having a bad dream, so I may as well be the hero.
yeah. He also has like a dialogue. He says like, "God, in heaven, do you smell bad?" When the monster grabs him, the monster
Yeah,
roars and he goes, "No, I'm pretty sure it's you."
yeah. No, Ben has some really fun one-liners in this. Like I love the thing. I think in general in most versions because he's got a lot of really fun one-liners.
Yeah.
He's just a very down-to-earth, sympathetic, relatable guy.
There's then the Doctor Storm's like, "Oh, this is not good," and the Reed just does a Samus and rolls into a ball and bounces out.
Yeah, like Samus. He
Yeah,
rolls into a ball.
yeah, like from Metroid.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Reed tries to like get Johnny to use his powers because he like uses his stretchy powers to like hold the monster and he tries to get Johnny to throw fireballs at the monster, but Johnny can't do it. He can't figure out how to create fireballs because he's so new with his powers.
I mean,
And
he also
so,
we don't know if he could create fire at this point. We don't know without carrying over to Ultimates. To be fair,
yeah, that's true. We don't know if he can, but we're pretty sure.
yeah. Ben kinda just solos this monster, honestly.
Yeah, there's some fantastic artwork by Adam Kubert in this. Some great splash pages of Ben just smacking the shit out of this monster.
Yeah,
It's clobbering time. He hasn't come up with that catchphrase yet, but
because his brother has beaten it up while saying it.
oh my gosh, don't even talk to me about that stupid tragic backstory in the
Come on, we
2015
liked
movie.
that movie. We had fun watching that movie.
That part was stupid. He doesn't need a tragic backstory.
He is a
Anyways,
tragic backstory.
yeah, just him getting his powers is the tragic backstory.
Yeah.
But then, of
Uh,
course, after they beat the monster, the police arrive and they're like, hands up. And they're like, surrender the humans, mutant. Because they look at the thing and I guess they just think he's a mutant immediately. And they shoot Ben. And that's when he learns that he's bulletproof because
yeah.
nothing happens. It is pretty interesting how the thing is the one that they treat with fear and absolute distrust and they think he's a mutant. Another one of those heroes where I'm like, yeah, he could definitely pass for a mutant and he can kind
Yeah.
of connect and relate with mutants and their struggle with how the public hates them.
I do like though. This is a big spoiler, but Johnny will later become a character on. Actually, a lot of random characters from different properties will become Ultimate Spider-Man characters, and Johnny will just become an Ultimate Spider-Man character for a bit. And people also mistake him for a mutant in that comic later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's the difference is so marginal. There's such a small difference between mutants and superhumans who have been mutated.
yeah. The army, ironically, are the ones who stop the police from shooting at Ben. Not that it does anything.
Yeah, and it's Glenn Talbot, the guy he's the main rival for Betty's love, the Hulk's rival in the comics, which is a fun little reference. A lot of fun little Easter eggs for longtime fans. And
There's a giant hole, and Ben just jumps down, and that's it.
yeah, so there's a fun double page spread where you see in each panel the three of them just gradually climbing down this giant hole. And Ben is so self-aware in his dialogue because he jumps in and he's like, I got some more misplaced anger to work off. And I'm like, that's so self-aware and very well put. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
but it's your fault. No offense.
Well, that's why he says it's misplaced anger, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Well,
at least he
that's
understands
fair.
that. Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
fun. It's
yeah.
just the boys climbing down a giant hole in the earth, as you do. Just Fantastic Four things.
And they end up surrounded by mole men or animen.
Yep. That's the
Yeah.
way issue 5 ends. That leads us into the last issue of this arc, issue 6, where Reed also has no idea what these things are. And
Like
he's like, I don't know what these things are. And Johnny's like, don't call them creatures. They are right
you're
there.
you're
Don't
offending
offend
them.
these guys. Yeah.
I think Reed also goes like, I think they're plants. Honestly,
It's really funny when you end up in a situation where Reed Richards does not know what he's dealing with,
yeah.
because that's how you know it's kind of fucked up.
Uh-huh. Also, this is a younger Reed. He's not in college yet. He's barely 16, 17-ish. So
Yeah, he's very inexperienced,
yeah,
but he'll learn. Sue is there, and Johnny's like, let go of my sister. And he releases this big flare, which blinds the mole man, because of
yeah,
course he's a subterranean guy.
yeah.
And Sue uses her chance to turn invisible and run to Reed. The mole man also, it's really funny, looks at the four of them and calls them fantastic. And he's like, I always had faith in you. And I think it's hilarious that he calls them fantastic. I
Mhm.
always love it when that happens.
Yeah. And Sue tells Reed it's not Victor that sabotaged the experiment. It's possibly a mole man. And Mole Man goes like, "You traitorous bitch! I'm a doctor and a scientist." And I'm like, "Really? You went to medical school?
Yeah.
Like really? I'm really tired of this trope of like, just I don't know if writers just back then didn't know like a doctorate's not the same as being a doctor. Like I don't know what
Yeah.
that deal is, or if they just want to say, oh, they're so smart they have multiple doctorates.
This man must have been in school for most of his life.
No wonder it's like a little so awkward.
Yeah. He
But
hasn't spent much time outside of the classroom, yeah, or the research lab.
yeah, but there's a scene where all the characters just talking about like what to do together, and he just gets overwhelmed with the conversation and just walks away. And Ray goes, "I think this guy went crazy while he's underground."
Yeah, because they're all trying to figure out what's going on, and the four of them are just talking over each other and thinking a lot of their thoughts out loud.
Yeah,
Even Mole Man is just like, blah, 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 blah. It's so funny because the Mole Man is just annoyed by Bendis speak, is the thing. I thought it was hilarious.
I think Bendis Speaks works in real life if there's one person, but once there's like everyone's doing, like I have a feeling most of us will get really tired real fast.
Yeah, definitely. So it's understandable.
Yeah,
And so then Mole Man gets his Animen to attack the Fantastic Four.
yeah.
And Ben's like, these aren't actual people, right? And Reed's like, nah, I think they're mostly just plants. So they can cut loose on them.
It's also such a weird guess. It's like, I think they're plants. It's like,
Yeah. I guess he's just guessing based on like, what Dr. Malekovich's research was.
yeah,
But it's really funny because Ben is also trying to figure out what his catchphrase is, and he's like, it's time to, I'll work on it. And so he hasn't quite got the it's clobbering time yet, which I think is a really funny touch to this origin. You
mm-hmm.
know what he's supposed to say, but he doesn't yet because he's not at that stage yet. He's still so early on. He just got his powers. So it's fun to see like early versions of characters like the Thing, where they're
Yeah.
still working on all those like flashy finishing touches.
You know, you didn't like Fanforstic where his catchphrase comes from his brother. But remembering, in the original movies, his catchphrase came from the TV people just made an action figure that says, it's clobbering time, so he just copies it. And I'm
I
wondering,
thought that was so much better.
look, no one has a catchphrase in real life. So, like, why is he working on a catchphrase? Does he stumble onto a good phrase and he just uses it all the time? Or is he looking for something to say over and over again on purpose?
I think, I think more people should have catchphrases. This is the thing.
Uh,
Like, I would love to have a catchphrase. I think we should all have catchphrases. I think catchphrases are underrated.
No, the only person in real life I could think who has a catchphrase was so good at it, he became president to all of our sadness.
Oh, I don't even want to talk about that. No,
Yeah.
there's more people than just that
Okay,
that
Donald
have
Trump,
catchphrases.
and that's it. Name one other guy.
Matthew McConaughey. It's like, all right, all right, all right.
He's only said that once in one movie. Let's be perfectly honest.
He said it a lot in real life.
Like, no, he's just quoting himself for the movie. That doesn't count.
I'll think of someone else.
Yeah, we have like 10 to 20 minutes left of this episode, generally. So yeah,
I'll think of something.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool double page spreads of this fight, and one of them is when the rest of the four are fighting the mole people or the Animen, and you see Johnny throughout the page just flying up and around through the page, which is really cool seeing that motion throughout the context of this whole battle. and Reed is looking around for the mole man. Because of how hard Ben is fighting, he is destroying the cavern and the place is coming down around them. So Reed's trying to find the mole man and trying to
Yeah.
actually save him.
Yeah.
But the mole man ends up falling down a giant chasm, so
Yeah.
can't save him.
I'll be honest, every fight team we've had since we got their powers, Ben has so far been soloing, doing most of the work.
I mean, he's a powerhouse. It's the thing, right?
Yeah, I feel the thing is underrated because this guy can take on the Hulk, right? It's a big thing. Like, he
Yeah,
ties with the Hulk.
because yeah, he will rarely, very rarely win against the Hulk. When that happens, it's under extreme circumstances, but he can go toe to toe with the Hulk and put up a great fight because power scaling and all that BS aside, the thing has so much heart to him.
He also knows how to fight in 616, to be fair.
Yeah,
He was like a Marine or something,
he's a
right?
very scrappy, down to earth. Like, he grew up on Yancey Street, rough and tumble kind of guy. He knows what it's like out on the streets. So, of course, he would be good at fighting.
The thing,
And I don't think this version is that much different. He was an athlete and a
yeah,
pretty tough kid growing up. So, of course, he knows how to fight.
the thing I remember about the thing about the thing, is that there's a comic where he's getting married, and he gets a gift from Wakanda, which is a giant panther statue that says increases fertility and your chance of having a son. And he just taps it and goes like, "I'm gonna get good use out of this." And I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
it's like, poor lady,
Man.
poor Kerry Washington.
Well, there's a thing in the main universe that Reed created or the Future Foundation created for the thing where it's this serum that he takes it, and I think it's 1 week a year he turns back into Ben Grimm and can do whatever he wants. And I think he saved that for his honeymoon one year,
Ew.
but then that got interrupted because the puppet master sent the Hulk after him, and it was a big fight. And that is the fight that I'm thinking of where the thing actually beats the Hulk. But that's because he gives it everything he has, and he's in a coma for a week after that. But
But it's still a thing where, like, I feel people just don't think about how powerful and strong the thing is, and that's the thing.
yeah, that is the thing about the thing.
Yeah,
But then, as the cavern's coming down around them and it's collapsing, Sue uses her force fields for the first time to protect the four of them.
yeah,
And this page is really cool because you get this like perspective of all the debris around the force field, and you see glimpses into the force field. And every panel, you see the four of them rising higher and higher as Sue uses her force fields to lift them all up to the surface,
yeah,
which is it was great to look at. And I think, it's tough because this is a damsel in distress situation for sure for Sue, where she was the one to be captured and hear the villain's evil monologue and everything.
but she's also the one to save them.
Yeah, she is the one to save them, which is the cool thing. She's the one to save them all and bring them back to the surface. And I don't think she's held captive for very long. So, they do the damsel in distress thing. So it's not perfect, but at least they do a lot better than the original material. The Stan Lee Jack Kirby run was not it for Sue. I'll say that. That was a rough period.
Different time, different period.
Yeah.
They get to the surface, and it flash forwards. I get a lot of flash forwards. This is not the worst one, actually. The Doctor Storm's meeting with the government, and the government says, "We're afraid, we're embarrassed, we're thinking of rededicating the Baxter Building and all its resources, studying the Mole Man and the tunnels."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And they're also preventing the government from putting the four of them, the Fantastic Four, in a mutant detention center, especially Ben,
yeah,
because the government is scared of them and thinks they're monsters.
yeah,
So at least they have the resources from Dr. Storm and the rest of the Baxter Foundation to back them and to protect them from this, which I think shows the difference between them and mutants generally, is that they actually have people to vouch for their character and vouch for them and the resources to keep them out of all
yeah.
that nonsense.
They're celebrities.
Exactly. They're celebrities. That is the thing about the Fantastic Four. They're scientists, they're explorers, and they're celebrities.
Yeah, they're superheroes last. Basically.
Yeah, because then in this conversation, Reed and Sue are like, I don't know about this new life. We're not really fighters.
We're scientists.
Yeah. Ben and Johnny, they say, are more fighters. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Johnny would definitely be more in it to be a big, flashy superhero. And Ben is a fighter at heart and like a scrapper.
He's a man who understands that with great power comes great responsibility.
Hell yeah, brother.
Sue is with Reed, and they're staring at the computers and all, and the sun. And she was like, "Hey, I'm not afraid of this, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm willing to do this together with you if you want it." And
Mm-hmm.
Reed goes like, "I found Victor,"
Yeah. He's
because
in Sector 7H.
yeah, because Reed is a man who doesn't fall for such charms. The last time he did, there were consequences. So he's one of those guys.
I mean, they're still into each other, but whatever you say,
If they were
Josh.
into each other, why didn't he respond to that? That was a thought move. She was getting on to him, but he said
I,
no.
I think he responded pretty well. He did not even say no. You're just extrapolating based on your own personal bias.
By saying nothing, he is saying no.
That's not how that works.
That is how that works. If someone doesn't respond, that's a no.
He's just oblivious. He's just an
She
oblivious,
asked him a
awkward nerd.
question, and he didn't respond.
Anyways, they're totally into each other, and the rest of this series is going to prove you wrong, but that's fine. Yeah, I thought this was a very fun story arc. I mean, I know I went on about some of the flaws, like how clunky it was to include Ben and stuff about how it doesn't really make much sense in this version for him to blame Reed or things like that. But I know you have mentioned, Josh, about origin story fatigue, and I totally get that. But
Yeah.
I don't know, for me, the Fantastic Four origin is one of those evergreen stories that I don't get tired of because it's not the same as the original, but I still love the process, that issue of them all waking up and learning that they have powers, and you get to see them fumble around with them for a while and like freak out and discover these new abilities they have. I think the initial shock makes it seem kind of like a horror movie almost, but then seeing them also come together as a team and become something greater and become superheroes is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And still remain scientists and explorers and everything, but I thought it was really well done. I thought the artwork especially was gorgeous,
Yeah.
and I thought the dialogue was very fun thanks to Bendis, and the story by Millar was great. So yeah.
I thought this was a great story. I liked it. That being said, I am suffering from origin fatigue. This idea, but like, look, I still really liked it. It was a great story. I think if I read this when it came out, I would have really liked it. And I
Yeah,
still did really like it. Like, don't get me wrong, I am tired of the origin story, but I still really did like the story. It was solid. I thought this was a big part of the appeal of Ultimate Marvel. It's like in between the two extremes of Ultimate Marvel, and like this had such a big impact that like I remember before we did this podcast, like
yep,
both of us did not realize like this thing where Doctor Doom is always with the Fantastic Four on the original trip comes from Ultimate Fantastic Four.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
as we said before, like it influenced all their media adaptations since
yeah,
then with
yeah,
World's Greatest Heroes and the movies and everything.
yeah. Which is such a weird thing because it's so influential, but no one remembers Ultimate Fantastic Four with the exception of the Maker.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely get to the Maker eventually, but yeah,
Uh,
Ultimate Fantastic Four, I think this first arc was just
yeah.
exactly what you would hope for when it comes to an ultimate adaptation of Marvel's first family. I'm excited to see where it goes from here,
Yeah.
especially because Bendis and Miller, because of scheduling conflicts, weren't able to continue on Ultimate after this first arc.
Yeah.
So the next arc is going to be Warren Ellis and Stuart Immonen.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, despite the problematic nature of Warren Ellis as a person, I have enjoyed the stuff he's written, so I'm sure that should be good. And Stuart Immonen is one of my favorite artists in general. But yeah. Any final thoughts, Josh, on these issues?
I feel I said a lot. We said a lot. Yeah.
I think we did too. I think
Yeah.
we said a good amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. The next episode, we are going to get back to Ultimate Spider Man.
I was gonna say every time we do a thing, we always go back to Ultimate Spooderman.
I mean, come on. It's the staple of Ultimate Marvel for a reason. It is the creme de la creme of Ultimate Marvel. This is the ideal, is Ultimate Spider Man that all the other comics should strive to.
It's the chicken, beans, and rice.
Exactly. Whatever
I
that means.
hot take. I think it's not Ultimate Spider-Man we should strive for. It's Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Fantastic Four because I feel Ultimate Fantastic Four makes a few big leaps that Ultimate Spider-Man would not make.
Yeah, this first arc definitely. I
Yeah.
think It's going to have its ups and downs as creative teams change throughout the rest of the series. But I think this first arc is definitely what you would hope for and want. It's the ideal out of the Ultimate Universe. But yeah, the next arc we're going to be reading is Ultimate Spider-Man 54 through 59. I'm very excited to get back into it with Ultimate Spider-Man. It should be great.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you guys want to reach out and talk to us about the comics we read or our thoughts on them or what you think about the show or anything in general, you can email us. Josh, what's our email?
It is ultimatecomicspodcast@gmail.com. Remember, that's plural, and podcast is singular, so ultimatecomicspodcast@gmail.com.
That is right. And if that is too old fashioned for you, once again, follow us on Instagram, Ultimate Comics Podcast. You can like our photos, reels, stories, comment, reach
You
out
could,
to us.
you could also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That is right.
Yeah.
Is that also just Ultimate Comics Podcast?
Yeah, same as the email, actually.
Perfect. Yeah, please do. And you can watch full videos of this podcast as well.
And on Instagram, technically.
And on Instagram, watch our reels.
Yeah.
All right. Until then, guys, though, we'll be back next time with Ultimate Spider-Man. Take care. Make mine Ultimate Marvel. Bye.
Bye.